but we had a lot of time to contemplate and think and talk about life. And last night we finished watching the Oppenheimer movie. Did anybody watch that? It's really good, but you have to be like focused. It's a 3-hour movie. You got to be focused, and you have to be like present. If you're like on your phone, you're gonna miss it. Yeah, it's a movie you got to like put your phone away for. And it's just good. And then we watched an Einstein documentary about the bomb too. But it started making me think about consciousness and how a lot of times in history we have these mentalities that we have to advance our society in some form, whether it's scientifically or psychologically or whatever. And then I started thinking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Do you guys remember this from school? Yes? No? Yeah, maybe so. Right? And so, I don't know, it seems like people that got educated in Texas or Florida didn't really learn stuff, but it's okay. I don't know, it's very interesting. But yeah, so this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Abraham Maslow was a famous psychologist, and in 1943, he came out with this pyramid. And it essentially means that unless you have your food, water, warmth, and rest, your psychological or physiological needs, you can't focus on next having safety and security. And until you have safety and security, you can't have any intimate relationships or friends because they won't mean that much to you. And then before you even focus on your own feeling of accomplishment and happiness, you have to have some belongingness. And then after you feel all of these things, then you can focus on self-actualization, fulfilling your potential, etc. And so the idea is, physiological needs is like, I'm warm, I feel good, I can eat, I got food on the table. Safety needs means I feel safe. Belongingness and love means I feel together, I feel loved, I feel happy, I'm a part of something. Esteem says I feel special, like I know I'm a good person. And self-actualization means I feel on top of the world. I know I'm capable of more and I'm becoming that more. And money consciousness is all about essentially making sure your physiological needs are met and then going straight to self-actualization. And it made me sit this morning when I was meditating and think about, is it possible to go straight from here to here without worrying about this in between? And I was reading Hawkins' book, Truth versus Falsehood, this morning, and I saw this chart. And essentially it says that if you're under the level of 200 cycles per second in consciousness, which is 200 is the difference between power and force, strong versus weak, struggle versus not struggle. Under 200, there's a 50% chance of unemployment. There's a 22% chance of poverty, 50% rate of criminality, and life is only 15% of people under 200 say life is even just okay. And a lot of it comes down to, I was talking to Yaritza this morning, thinking like, is it possible to make sure as a kid, you don't necessarily have to worry about food, water, and shelter? Like in theory, as a child, your food, water, and shelter is taken care of by your parents. So then is it possible to just go straight to teaching children or teaching people self-actualization? And then I was walking the dog and I was just having a contemplation, and it made me think that really safety is more of a feeling than a reality. Belongingness and love is more of a feeling than a reality. Having self-esteem is more of a feeling than reality. The only thing that's a reality is, whether you can eat and have water and warmth is pretty like physical. It's a yes or no. Like, do you have food? And I don't mean are you able to go get a nice steak, but like, are you able to just eat peanut butter and jelly? Are you able to drink clean water? And are you able to put a roof over your head? In America is 84%. The poverty of America is 84% wealthier than the wealthiest average of the rest of the countries. Meaning that people in poverty in America don't have poverty. They have food, water, clothing, and shelter. They don't have to worry about that stuff. You go to Africa, they don't have sanitary water. They live in little huts. If it rains, they get wet. I don't care how broke you feel. The reality is that if you live in America, you have this met. Now, whether you have to work really hard for it or work at McDonald's, if you work at McDonald's every day, 40 hours a week, you have food, water, and warmth. Even if your AC isn't on, you can take your clothes off. Even if your heat isn't on, you can put jackets on. So everyone in reality, beside homeless people in America, has this met. And then my question this morning as I'm contemplating is, so therefore, is safety a real thing or is it a feeling? Because really you could feel safe, right? Think about all the athletes that come from very, very broken homes, but they feel belongingness and love on the football team. They feel really good because they're good at football. They feel belongingness with their team. They feel safe. They might have to leave their home. They might not feel safe at home. There might be drugs, violence, guns, and fighting and abuse at home. But the reality is they can go find safety, belongingness, and esteem somewhere. Typically, that might be done through sports or through some extracurricular activity you do as a child. So then is it possible that if you just focus on self-actualization, that all the rest will happen? And it comes back to the answer is yes, because if you teach people to live above 200 cycles per second, if you teach people to access their courage, if you teach people consciousness, then now they immediately, 92% chance they'll get out of poverty. There's a 98.5% chance, that they'll get out of unemployment, 98% chance that they'll get out of poverty. There's a 85% chance that they'll at least think life is okay. And there's a 91% chance that they won't become criminals anymore. So therefore, if you just teach people consciousness as kids, assuming that their basic needs are met, which most of Americans' basic needs are met, then consciousness can help solve the rest of these. And I feel like in 1943, Abraham Maslow, in that time period, we didn't have the evolution of consciousness that we have today to understand that your reality is really how you think, and your thoughts are based on your feelings, and then your feelings are based on your emotions. And so the reality is for each of you guys, if you can feel good about you, if you can feel like you're achieving your potential, if you can feel good about what you're doing, if you can feel belongingness, if it's at home, if you have come from a broken home and you hate your home life, well, you can come here and feel belongingness as part of a team that's helping to improve consciousness, that's helping to empower other people to regain their financial freedom, that's helping other people to step out of the worry about these things and focus on being able to do it. If you don't feel safe and secure at home, then you can come to work at 8:30 in the morning and stay here till 8:30 at night, and all you got to do is go home to your food, water, and warmth for a couple hours, go to bed, and come back. This is why people that are pro athletes are able to get out of where they come from, because they have this met, and they don't have this at home. It doesn't say you have to have this at home, but you can have this here. You can feel safe here. You can feel belongingness and love here. You can feel esteem here. And so then the question becomes, if all you focus on, if you assume that your physiological needs are met, which in America, especially in Miami, they are met. Even if you go work at McDonald's, you will have food, water, and warmth in Miami. I mean, you will. You can go get a minimum wage job. The whole purpose of minimum wage technically is to make sure this is achieved. And so therefore, you don't necessarily need safety to feel love. You can feel safe in love. You don't need to feel belongingness with esteem in order to, it's not one before the other. I think Abraham Maslow is actually wrong because of the evolution of consciousness, because if you actually believe that you're achieving your full potential, that you're accessing your creativity, then wouldn't you feel good about yourself? And then if you feel good about yourself, even if you don't have intimate relationships, wouldn't you be able to love yourself? And then if you love yourself, wouldn't you feel safe where you're at because you feel love? So what if it's possible that instead it is all about helping people achieve money and then achieve consciousness? Because one and the other, as long as you have money taken care of and you don't have to struggle every single day, then if you improve your level of consciousness, there's a very high probability that you'll not be employed, not be impoverished, not be a criminal, and life will be at least okay for you. Right? Life being okay is a feeling of neutrality. Neutrality is at 250, It doesn't have to say that life is all sunshine and rainbows, but life is at least okay for now. And so therefore, there really is no distinction between money and consciousness. They're one and the same. And if we can improve people's consciousness and at least help them make a baseline amount of money to where they can make sure their physiological needs are met, you don't necessarily need to go up this ladder. You can go from here to here, and then it'll satisfy the rest. I think it's important to understand how important consciousness is to feeling the rest of these things. Because even if you live in a small little place and you are eating peanut butter and jelly, but you have running water and you can take a shower and you can go to bed with a comforter over yourself at nighttime, the rest of these are really not needs. They're all feelings. Because you can feel good about yourself and then you don't necessarily need to be in a relationship. The only reason you need to be in a relationship, people that go relationship hopping, is because they don't actually feel good about themselves. And so if you feel good about yourself, which is a byproduct of you knowing that you're on your path to self-actualization, then all of the rest is technically taken care of. And so therefore, all that's important is to study sales and business and entrepreneurship and free enterprise, and then also study consciousness. Because if you understand how to put food on your table, and you understand how to once in a while do something fun, like go away to Key Largo for $500 and have a nice little getaway for a little bit, for one night, that satisfies your desire for something outside of this day-to-day routine, and then you can focus on consciousness, all of your other needs will be met. There's nothing really else to study. Everything else in between is really just a lower vibration of actually studying consciousness itself. You don't have to read a book on love and how to have a good relationship, because you can read all the books on relationships you have, but if you don't feel good about yourself or safe about where you're at, then your relationships will be bad relationships. You don't necessarily need safety at home, because you can go feel safety somewhere else. You don't necessarily need to do any of this. These are all feelings. And so your feelings are all about your thoughts. And so you can be in a broken home with your parents fighting downstairs and they could be abusing each other. But if you feel good about yourself and you know that you're on your path, then you can let that part go. And that's all that it comes down to, is no matter how bad your situation is, no matter how bad you think your situation is, reality is your situation is just fine. You're not living in Africa with no shelter, dirty water, and you don't have any of this, and you have to struggle to get food. So stop feeling so bad for yourself. Those are all your emotions. But if you study consciousness and why you do what you do, then everything in your life will be taken care of. In the world today, if you're sitting here right now and you're wearing a suit or you look good, it is clear that your physiological needs are met. Otherwise, you'd be wearing rags. So all of your physiological needs are met, and then therefore, this all has to do with your emotions, and your emotions all have to do with consciousness. And if you can just muster up the courage to transcend the lower levels of consciousness and live in a high state of consciousness, then everything else will take care of itself by the actualization of your true self. You will no longer live in poverty if you focus on consciousness. And a lot of times people say, well, the idea is that I can't focus on achieving my full potential if I don't feel safe. That's not true. That's not true. You don't have to feel safe to study consciousness. You can read David Hawkins' book while your family is fighting outside of yourself. You don't necessarily have to have an intimate relationship before you feel good about yourself. In fact, I think that this is upside down. And so it's important to understand that you guys all have your basic needs met. You live in Miami, you live in America. How lucky can you be? So then instead of feeling so bad for yourself every day, instead of thinking that you're so bad as a person, that you have all this guilt and this shame and apathy and depression, it's actually pretty selfish to be depressed. It's pretty selfish to have a mental illness in America. It's pretty selfish to have a belief that you're not good enough when you live in an area. Well, all you have to do is study consciousness and study money and trust yourself that you're on your path. Everything else is a total manifestation of low self-esteem, which is a manifestation of lack of studying consciousness. And so if every day all people did was study consciousness and make sure they went to work and paid the bills, then everything else will take care of itself. And it was interesting reading his article in 1943 because in his mind, you can't go to the next level without the other. And in my personal life, my experience is that I went from here to here, and then this all just sort of seemed to happen. Because Hawkins talks about causality is not reality. You don't have to have this in order to unlock this, in order to unlock this, in order to unlock this, in order to unlock this. If you focus on being in a high state of vibration, the rest of it will magically take care of itself. But it's really not magic, it's science, and it's really what consciousness is all about. And so if all you do is study sales so you can live a prosperous life, because sales is the highest paid profession in the world, and you happen to be in the industry that's created the most millionaires, which is financial services. So if you study financial services and sales of financial services, and you read books like Tom Hopkins' How to Master the Art of Selling Financial Services, and you also focus over here on how to let go of your low levels of consciousness and transcend higher levels of consciousness by reading the books Letting Go and Transcending Levels of Consciousness, then therefore in due time you are achieving your own potential one day at a time, and you will feel better about yourself. You'll feel more belongingness and love because you won't seek this outside of you, and you'll feel safe because how can you not feel safe in Brickell in Miami? And I'm probably, if the video gets posted, probably would get mad negative feedback for saying something like it's selfish to have a mental illness in America, but I truly believe that. It is actually very selfish to have that. It's very selfish to be depressed and feel oppressed in the most prosperous world and country that has ever been. So how can you sit at home and not feel good about yourself based on your feelings of your own insecurities when if you don't put any work into this, well, no duh. It's like sitting at home wondering why you're broke, but you've never studied money. Well, no duh, you've never studied the mind. Of course your mind will be ill. And so it's important that we teach people and we focus first on ourselves to live out this mindset that all that matters at the end of the day is living in a high state of vibration, which is a high level of consciousness, which therefore essentially unemployment, poverty, happiness, and criminality all sort of happen, because that's what the vibration is. That's why we hear these good vibes and bad vibes. I mean, the vibes is short for vibrations. And so if you wake up every day living in a high state of vibration, then everything will happen for you. You won't feel bad. It's how could you feel bad about anything in your life if you truly are one day at a time letting go and forgiving yourself and your parents and your teachers and people that may have made you feel sad as a child? That was in the past, you're in the now, and you can create your future. And so this is just what was on my mind today. It has nothing to do with sales. It has nothing to do with anything beside this is how I think, and this is what is important to focus on every day. And so if all you do is read books and study how to be successful in terms of money and feel safe and secure that you have your stuff taken care of, and then also study consciousness, your poverty will go. There's a 98.5% chance that if you improve your level of consciousness, that your poverty will go away.